there. They had never, we took them on trips and stuff off the island. We were youth ministers. And they couldn't afford us at a restaurant. But they were raised, they've been in restaurants there, and everybody just fed them whatever they had, you know. Those kids were terrified. They couldn't do anything on their own if they got off the island. So we had to do everything for them, or kind of walk them through.
I can't believe it. Hey, Matt, I am. I'm still alive.
Basically, I think we just go in the restaurant. How are you?
I'm okay, but Billy's in bad shape. They're finding
I don't know
blood
why
from her.
I'm just yesterday waiting to see outside that they really
Permanently.
I don't know how any of that
So,
works.
Where is the
Oh my.
he's got those are in his lungs, but it's in his left leg. It's just waiting. He's going to be up there longer than you thought.
All right. We gotta pray tonight. Send them up prayers. She's in God's name. The prayers are prayed in God's name.
I keep finding voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me to measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know. Oh, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short, when I don't belong. Oh, you say I am yours, and I believe. Oh, I believe what you say of me. I believe the only thing that matters now is everything you think of me. In you I find my worth, in you I find my identity. Oh, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short, when I don't belong. Oh, you say I am yours, and I believe. Oh, I believe what you say of me. I believe. Taking all I have and now I'm laying
morning. Such a beautiful Sunday morning, beautiful weather, a little bit of a breeze, a little bit of Sahara dust, but that's okay. It's still a beautiful, beautiful day, and we thank you for being here. Just want to remind you, reinforce, encourage, empower you to continue what you're doing, wearing your mask. Please, please stay vigilant. The numbers have yet grown again this week. So please continue to do it. And it's hot. It can be so inconvenient, but you know what is more inconvenient is for a small child to get sick that has asthma, or one of our elderly residents in the community to have to go on a ventilator. That's what's more inconvenient than for us to wear our mask. So please consider this a service to others, that though it may be a little inconvenient, for those that are at risk, it can also be life-threatening. So please consider continuing to do this. Mitch was just telling me that some of the ones going to South Carolina to the beaches, they're advising that they self-quarantine when they come back. So it's still really serious. Please continue to wear them. Thank you so much, and glad to see you here.
Thank you, Valerie. Welcome, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Does this work?
Yes.
We're good? So until I start to preach, I can use my mask. But welcome everyone who's here physically. Also, we want to welcome folks that are tuning in online, and also those who are tuning in by phone, and who are in their cars. Just welcome everybody. If you want to follow along, there is an online bulletin, and it's found at our website. So you can go to fumcstanley.org, and you can look for the quick links and just click bulletin, and all the words to the songs, all the links for different opportunities that are there, what's going on this week. So it is a resource. You can use it anytime during the week as well. There is a connection card. So if you're new here or haven't been around in a while, let us know you're here, and share whatever contact information you're comfortable with there on the connection card. So adult Sunday school is, we've kind of had a pause with our adult Sunday school until now. So this Sunday, immediately after worship, adult Sunday school will gather, and Tommy, you're gathering at the fire pit behind the Life Center. So you can drive around, you can pull up right to it if you need to, and but face masks are required. Take care of each other. We also have a Summer Sabbath challenge, and there are challenge cards there on the table if you would like to join. So a lot more things going on in the life of our church, particularly around conversations around race. You can be a part of those with our sister church Mount Pleasant and ourselves. So that's Thursday night. But for details, check your newsletter or check our website. But we welcome everybody here. Can I ask you for a second, can you stand up where you are? Stand where you are. We're going to be practicing a new, some new techniques of greeting each other. We live in a new day. And so our Eastern brothers and sisters have always greeted one another with a bow out of reverence that we are each made in God's image. God's breath moves through each one of us. So I invite you, keep your feet where they are. You can rotate them around, but just greet your neighbors. Bow. There you go. Bow to your neighbors. Bow to your neighbors. Just acknowledge we are. Can somebody come bow for the folks who are online? Any young people? Would any young people be willing to bow for the folks online? So, yay, Ileana, bow for the yeah. So we really are all in this together, y'all, and we always have been. We just sometimes take it for granted. So welcome. The call to worship is Psalm 13. Long enough, God. Long enough. You have ignored me long enough. I've looked at the back of your head long enough, God. Long enough. I've carried this ton of trouble. I have lived with a stomach full of pain long enough. Long enough, my arrogant enemies have looked down their noses at me. Long enough, God. So take a good look at me, God. My God. I want to look life right in the eye, so no enemy can get the best of me or laugh when I fall on my face. God, I've thrown myself headlong into your arms. God, I have thrown myself headlong into your arms. I'm celebrating your rescue. I'm singing at the top of my lungs. I'm so full of answered prayers.
When he told you you're not good, when he told you you're not strong enough to put up a good fight, when he told you you're not worthy, when he told you you're not beautiful, that you'll never be enough. He is a liar. He'll take your breath, stop you in your steps. Fear, he is a liar. He'll rob your rest, steal your happiness, cast your fear in the fire. When he told you you were trouble, you'll forever be alone. When he told you you should run away, you'll never find a home. When he told you you were dirty and you should be ashamed. When he told you you could be the one that grace could never change. Fear, he is a liar. He will take your breath, stop you in your steps. Fear, in the fire, 'cause he is a liar. Let your fire fall and cast out all my fears. Let your fire fall and love is all. Let your fire fall and cast out all my fears. Let your fire fall and love is all I fear. 'Cause fear, he is a liar. He will take your breath, stop you in your
And so we welcome each other, or God is the one who welcomes us in this glorious space, this living cathedral. And we just want to give you a few minutes to be still, be to rest in God's presence, to lay down our fears. Wind of God, breath of God, Spirit of God, we welcome your presence. As you have freely, graciously welcomed us into yours, we open ourselves to you. We thank you for the ways already that you have been blessing us this morning, the gift of this day and this breath. We thank you. We thank you for the gift of one another and for gathering us together in this community. We thank you for our brothers and sisters who whose skin is darker than ours. Particularly our brothers and sisters at Mount Pleasant. Thank you, Lord. We thank you for musicians and sound folks and setup team, people that have worked to create a space for us to encounter you. So come, Holy Spirit, meet us, each one of us, in a personal way, just as you know we need it. And Lord, we lift up every person who comes here during the week. We pray that they would encounter you here, that it would be sacred ground for them and a holy experience. And Lord, with them, with ourselves, we lift up those that we love and are concerned about, maybe near or far. And so I invite you just briefly to call out names or situations that we want to lift up to God. And we usually respond after each one, but I want you just to hold that response for a minute. Just lift up names or situations to God.
Holly Davis and family, my son-in-law, Vincent McCoy.
Leslie Mooney. John and Joy Cannon. Ronnie Lineberger. Roger and Ray. Lord, into your good hands. We commit all these persons, both spoken aloud or silently in our hearts. Lift up our community and our world in the midst of so much unrest and pain. Lord, we ask for your help. We humble ourselves. Help us be instruments of your justice and peace. We pray all this through your Son, Jesus. And everyone said, all right. Luke, you'll start to find your mic. We are not passing an offering. Well, outdoors, we've never passed an offering basket, but we thank you for your generosity that enables us to continue our ministry. At such a time as this, it's so essential. And so we're trying to feed people every week at our food pantry. We're trying to create a place where you can cross the racial line and find fellowship with people who look different than you. We are trying to be salt and light in our community, and we can only do that through ways to give. There's an offering basket here. There's an offering basket on the fellowship, the welcome table there. You can give online at our website, fumcstanley.org. You can mail it to the office. You can donate your boat. Okay. No, well, maybe not. Maybe not. But anyway, thank you for the many ways that you're generous. I think, folks, thank you for your fresh vegetables that you're donating out of the community garden plots or out of your own home gardens to our food pantry. That's a precious thing. Or the donation of your time. Just thank you. This ministry, you are this ministry. So thank you. And one of the ways, you get to see it here up front and with the sound team. Just thank you guys for your service, and Luke, thank you for your faithfulness. So.
Today I'm going to be reading out of the book of Genesis, chapter 22, verses 1 through 14. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. One day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey, while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father, "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and the wood are here," Isaac said, "but where's the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the 2 of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up, and there in the thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, "The Lord will provide." And to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." The word of God for the people of God.
So I want to introduce someone to you. This is going to be a big introduction. So Doug and Phyllis Ivy have been worshiping with us really since we moved back outside. And they had worshiped with us at our Main Street campus long, long ago. And then they took Phyllis's mother in and cared for her. So, and then she passed away a couple months ago in the midst of the COVID crisis at Stanley Total Living. Some of you may recognize her from there, just from around the community. But I was visiting them this week, and they were telling me their story, and feeding me some dangerous like brownie things. So when I got in my car, like instantly God reminded me of the scripture that's assigned for this week, which Luke just read from the Old Testament. And I thought I was going in a completely different direction with the message. And as soon as I sat down in my car, I got it, in their driveway. After I'd heard their story, God just brought me back to the scripture, and I go, "So?" And God said, "Do you not get it? Their story is Abraham's story, and Abraham's story is their story." Maybe you could say their story and Abraham's story is our story. So, with no further ado, I want to share the mic with Doug. Woo! Can we give Doug and Phyllis some love? This is incredibly brave to do this. So thank you for your willingness. Here, I'll give him. I'm gonna attack. He's not gonna have to touch anything. Okay. Can I take my mask off and I'll leave it on?
Take it off.
Okay, take it off. My story starts, I was a police detective with the Gaston County Police Department, and I was working in the Special Investigations section, and I got a call one weekend from an informant of mine who told me of a drug trafficker who had just got in a large shipment of marijuana, over 1,000 pounds. And the drug trafficker was well known to us, and the problem was the drug trafficker lived across the state line in South Carolina. So I had to call South Carolina, and it was a weekend. They hooked me up with somebody that I didn't know, had never met. I told this officer the person, the place, the vehicles, everything that I knew, and that my informant had gotten the information about this supply that had come in. And I asked the officer to do surveillance and investigate, and if he left, he was making deliveries. If people come in, they were coming in to pick up. And all of that was coming back into Gaston County. The drug trafficker was from Gaston County. And so the officer called me back in about an hour, and they had done a search warrant for the house and said that I said the informant had been in the house and they were going to search it. And that really aggravated me, and it was like, well, you know, y'all were down there, I don't know how y'all do things. And so I said, well, if that's what y'all were going to do, okay. Well, I think he took that as to I was agreeing with what he said in that search warrant. So anyway, they went and they made the search. There was almost 800 pounds of marijuana in the house, and that's how much that he was getting out pretty quick. And to have, you know, from over 1,000 pounds, and he was down to a little bit under 800 pounds by then. And so he called me back a little while later, told me about this big bust that they had made, and I thought, well, you know, that's them, that's not me. And so time went on, and then it come as a strange thing began to happen with me. I began to be fearful for the informant, because this was big level people out of Texas or somewhere, and I was thinking about the safety of the informant. And by the time it came around to go to trial, it was clearly to me that it was centered on that search warrant, and whether I was going to say, well, no, that's not really what I said. And in my mind, I was thinking that they're not going to believe that I've changed, that I'm changing the thing now. They're going to think that I was bought off by the drug traffickers and now all this, and they're going to be furious, and they're going to demand to know who the informant was. So I've been processing all of this stuff and getting more fearful and more fearful. And I talked myself into, well, let's just be, the easiest thing to do is just go along with it. I'll never have to deal with them again and come back and continue on. Now, I was a Christian at the time. I knew that was wrong, but I had worked into this frenzy, and that was an easy way out. So, but the problem was when I took the stand that day and I spoke those words that warrant was good, I physically felt it. I left the courthouse that day dejected. All of a sudden this giant wall went up between me and the Lord. The drug dealer was convicted, sent to prison. I was glad that
he was not going to be bringing any more drugs into Gaston County and, you know, all of those things. And he was guilty because he had all that stuff there. And so I went on with my life. And over the years, I was always reminded of that time that I gave false testimony. There's never an excuse in the court system to ever give false testimony. Everybody else does, but the police officers, there's never an excuse for that. I was so guilty of that. And over the years, I wanted to have a right relationship with the Lord, but I couldn't. There was a big giant wall there, and I was not willing to knock that wall down because I would expose myself to what I had done. So my career went on and advanced, and I actually a sergeant later, and then became a captain later. And there came a time when I was assigned to an advanced management school, a 3-month-long course at North Carolina State. I was to go up there, and it was 3 months, go to school during the week, come home on the weekend. So I started that. One Sunday night, we lived in Belmont, and as I was leaving home to get on 85 to go back to state for another week, the phone rang in my car. And in those days, we had a telephone in the car. And when I answered it, it was a district attorney, one of the district attorneys in Gaston County. He said, "Doug, I've been trying to contact you all weekend." He said, there's attorneys in South Carolina that have filed paperwork, and he named the drug dealer. And all of a sudden, I was racked with fear. I pulled over on the side of the road, and he said, they filed a motion for a new trial because they believe that you gave false testimony in the first trial. This was 10 years later. 10 years had gone by. I had kept that a secret. My wife never knew anything about it. She never knew anything had happened like that. And nobody did. God did. And all that time, I had this giant wall between me and him. So I am just so sick, physically sick. I don't know if anybody's ever been in that kind of fear. My world was collapsing around me. I thanked him for the call. I pulled back out on I-85, started toward Raleigh. The best way I can describe it is me and God started wrestling. We had a wrestling match, and I was, what if this, what if that? I want to serve you, Lord, but how do I expose myself? I can't. And going up the road, I started listing the things that mattered to me. My wife, number one, my son, had one son, my family, my job, my career. I had spent my adult life being a police officer. I was well trained, well educated, you know, for that career. And my integrity, the truthfulness, all of that was going to collapse. I knew that my wife was going to be furious because she had no knowledge of any of this. I knew that she was going to throw me out of the house. I knew my son was going to be ashamed of me. I knew my career was going away if I exposed myself. I knew that my freedom was going to go away because it's a crime to commit perjury in court. So all these things that were just, and there was God. All this list of things, and then I'm doing this in my mind, I'm going up the road, and there was God. I had had such a desire to serve the Lord. And so I told God then, I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I want to serve you. I give up all these things because I want to serve you. I give it up for you. Burdened, hurt, scared. I go on to school in a few days. I can't take it anymore, so I come back home. I know I need to tell Phyllis, so I come in. She's shocked I'm home early. My son comes in. I said, y'all need to sit down. I need to tell you something. Fully expecting the next thing out of her mouth was to get out. I told her what had happened 10 years ago and what I had decided that I was going to do. I got the opposite reaction that I totally expected. I got the love, the forgiveness from her, the support from her, and I never expected that. The next day, Phyllis said, "You really need to go tell your mother." My mother lived right down the street. I didn't know how I was going to do that. So we go down there. My mother's a strong, really strong Christian lady. She knows that something's wrong when I walk in because the fear was just so crushing. And so I start telling her this story. And I tell her about the car ride. I tell her about all of that. And then I say, when I go to court next week in South Carolina and tell the truth, God's going to forgive me. She jumped up, she came across the room and she said, "That's a lie from the devil." She laid her hands on my shoulder and she said, "Satan, get your hands off my son in Jesus' name." And when she said that, all the fear, everything, it fell right out of me and it dropped right out the bottom of my feet. I physically felt it leave. And instantly, the sweetest peace replaced that. I had never experienced it. And she looked in my eyes and she said, "It's gone now, isn't it?" I said, "It's gone." From that moment forward, I had total, complete peace. Phyllis didn't. We went to court that next week. I took the stand down there and I told the truth. I said I had given false testimony 10 years ago and here's the truth. They had actually located the informant and they had the informant there in court and all was forgiven with him too. The drug dealer had gotten saved in prison. The drug dealer thanked me for what I did and for what I was now doing, and the drug dealer said God had put him where he needed to be, and he felt like he would be dead today if he didn't go his walk. That was shocking to me. So the authorities down there didn't buy it. They did not believe it. They thought that I had been bought off by the drug dealers, and now I was changing my story to help the drug dealer get out of prison. I had resigned from the police department, so I had given up. My career was destroyed, and I never expected that they thought I would be lying now. So they were determined that they were going to charge me with the crime of perjury, and so what they did was I said, "Well, you're going to have to try me if that's the way it's going to be, because I'm telling you the truth." So what they did, they said, 10 years ago you gave this testimony. Now you give this testimony, and they're not the same, so that's perjury. I said, "Okay, that's right. That's what I did. I'm here to make that right." They filed the charges. I stood before a judge and pled guilty, and I did not have to go to jail. I paid a fine and left down there. My career's gone forever. I'm not trained to do anything else, and so my wife and I are coming back up the road from South Carolina, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I was supposed to do next. You can go from here to your house and pass stores, businesses, manufacturing companies, everything under the sun. And where do you go and fill out an application? What are you supposed to do next? And coming back to Belmont, I didn't know what the next step was going to be. That's the first part. Keep going.
Keep rolling.
Keep rolling. The only thing that I knew to do was check the want ads of the newspaper and get some kind of an idea of where I can just start putting applications in. My wife and I God had confirmed to us that I was doing the right thing. God's hand was in it. The first time we sat down to do our bills at the beginning of the month, the first month that I did not have a paycheck, when she got to the end of the road, we had more money left over than we had the month before. It was time for the equalized payments with Duke Power to weigh out. It was time for the equalized payments with the gas company, all those things. We had more money left over. That was God's way of showing us, I've got this. I've got this. So I sat down with the Sunday paper, the Charlotte Observer, huge want ad section. I sat down in my chair. I got the want ads and I went like that, and my hands could not physically open the paper. And I could, my hands wouldn't work. I laid the paper down and I'm sitting there. I didn't say anything to Phyllis, and I sat there for a little while longer, and 15, 20 minutes, I thought this was the strangest thing. I picked the paper up a second time and I went like this, and my hands could not physically open the newspaper. And God spoke to my heart and said, "You are not to look for a job." I laid the paper down and I thought, ooh, wow. God had, but I knew God said that. I told Phyllis, I said, I don't understand this, but God does not want me to look for a job. And we started praying. You can hunt around and you can look around and you can probably find a job. But I told the Lord, I want the job that you have for me. I don't understand all of this. I'm following you. I'm growing stronger day by day because that wall had come down. God had knocked that wall down where I couldn't do it. And so we didn't understand that. So we told other family members, God says that I'm not to look for a job. Well, my mother was all excited because she wanted to see the next thing God was going to do. She was thrilled. My daddy was not. My daddy did not understand that because the man works. And you got to put legs to your prayers. God will meet you halfway, which means you got to go the first half. And I said, well, God said I'm not supposed to look for a job. Phyllis's mother, very strong, godly lady. She wanted to help, but in her mind, the same thing. You got to do something for God. God's not going to just lay it in your lap. You have to do something. So every time we talk, Phyllis talked to her mom, has Doug found a job? Has Doug found a job? No, he's not looking for a job. My daddy the same way. No, he's not looking for a job. But we kept praying, God, I want the job that you have for me. And my dad was at the house one day. He was all wound up about all this stuff that you got to put legs to your prayers and all that kind of stuff. And he was getting really aggravating. Phyllis, we'd heard this. Now, you got to realize, too, that this is going on for months. This is not something that this happened one day and the next day, all this stuff. The days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months that I'm just not supposed to look for a job, and I didn't. I was taking care of the house. Phyllis was working. I was doing the shopping, the cleaning, the cooking. One minute I'm a hotshot police captain on the SWAT team and all the stuff that I thought was important. The next time I'm the king of the house. I'm taking care of the house and she's going to work every day. But I was okay with that. That's what God had me doing, and I was perfectly okay doing that. So my dad's at the house one day. He's all wound up, and he angrily says, "Do you think God's going to call you on the telephone and give you a job?" And Phyllis had heard enough of that. She hit her fist on the couch and she said, yes, we do. That's exactly what God's going to do. He's going to have somebody call this house and leave a message on that answering machine looking for Doug Ivy to give him a job. Well, Daddy stayed for a little while longer, but then he left. I did not know this. Now, we're walking this together. God has given me such a complete, total peace. He didn't do that to her. God told me, you're not to look for a job. God didn't tell her that. But she was standing firmly beside me because she believed me and she trusted the Lord. It took more for her to do that than it did because I knew God had talked to me. I knew God had spoken to me. I knew God had released me from all that fear. I didn't know this. She never said anything to me about this. But when Daddy left that day, she started to pray, God, I want you to do something so miraculous that everybody will know that you did it. She started praying every day as well. We had an answering machine like everybody does on our kitchen counter. I never pay any attention to the answering machine. She always has and always will, I guess. But I never even notice if there's a message or not. She didn't tell me, but every time she came in the house and saw that there was a message, she walked over to the machine and she said, God, let this be the one, and mashed the button. And she would be disappointed if it was one of the family or somebody else leaving a message. But you have to remember, this is weeks are going by. Now it's months are going by. And every time she walked in the house, God, let this be the one. Hit that button. We went to the store one morning, came back home. Like I always do, I never paid any attention to the answering machine. I went on through the house. I had forgot about that conversation with Daddy. I didn't remember anything about that.
But God did.
God did. She came in behind me, saw that there was a message on the answering machine, and she walked over and she said, God, let this be the one. And she mashed the button, and a man's voice said, this is Butch Adams, the principal of Warlick Alternative School. I'm looking for Doug Ivy. Would you give him my phone number and ask him to call me? Phyllis called out to me and she said, do you know Butch Adams? I said, yeah, he's the principal at one of the schools, but I hadn't talked to Butch in several years. I didn't know where he was. I just knew he was a principal somewhere. I came back in and she said, call him. And so I called him. She's standing here in front of me. And when Butch starts talking, he said, Doug, we have a brand new job at Warlick Alternate School. It's a behavior specialist job. He said, I've read the job description and it's got your name written all over it. You haven't found a job yet, have you? I said, no, I hadn't. And Phyllis is standing there and she's saying, is it a job? Is it a job? And I shake my head, yes. And she started crying. She turned away. She's crying. Butch is talking to me. And I hang up the phone, made the arrangements for a job interview. But we prayed. God, I want the job. If this is not the job, I don't want it. I want the job that you have for me. I went to the job interview. I met Butch out in the parking lot, and I said, Butch, now, do y'all know about the trouble in South Carolina? And Butch said, Doug, we know all about that. He waved his hand. He said, we know all about that, and it's okay. I said, okay, so I went in, the school administration office. I sat down with some of the other administrators, and I sat there for about 30 minutes and listen to them explain to me why they wanted me to have that job. I didn't say one word. I was a trained police officer. I didn't even really understand what a behavior specialist was. And I was listening to all this stuff, and so at the end of the interview, it was my job, and they asked me what the salary should be that I needed, and I said, well, y'all just need to decide that, because I wasn't going to start playing the numbers game. This is a God thing. So I left the interview that day, and the last thing they told me before I left that day was, well, technically this job doesn't exist yet, because this position is going to be paid for by a grant coming out of Raleigh that we expect to be approved by the end of the week. So I'm sitting there in a job interview for a job that I didn't apply for, that didn't even exist, while I'm sitting there. And so...
And you didn't say anything. And you didn't say anything in the interview.
I didn't say anything. I just sat there and listened to them pour all this stuff on me. So, the end of the week, Butch calls back and said the grant was approved, the position's approved, and this will be your start date. So, I start work at Warlick Alternative School, and I've been school gets started again. I'm working with the kids, so I'm learning as I'm going. So I'm trying to help the alternative school. Y'all were associated. I had no idea that y'all were associated with the school like you are. Every student has been expelled from regular school because of disruptive behavior and other things, but they're all expelled. And so I'd been there about a week, and I got a packet from personnel office with a note. They had checked the file, and they realized that I had never filled out an application, and I needed to get that filled out right quick and send it back in. I didn't. I never filled out an application. So a couple of months into the school year, one of the other teachers, I was talking to him, and at the county police, I had 20 years in at the police department. I had almost 200 sick days. I had vacation day, and all of that disappeared when I resigned from the police department. And Donnie looked and he said, man, well, this is all government agencies, the school, the police, all that. He said, you might ought to check into that. He said, that might transfer. I called the police personnel office, and she knew me, and I asked her about it, and she said, oh yeah, honey, we do that all the time. All I have to do is fill a piece of paper out and send it over to them. So she pulled my file, filled out that information, sent it to the school system, and just a few clicks of the computer, all of that was restored. The seniority, the sick time, the vacation, it was all restored. And what had happened, God took that list of things that were so important to me, and He gave all of it back to me. I didn't expect that. When you're in this process of being broken, you can't see God's breaking it all down so He can build it back up. That's what He did. He took all of that, but He didn't want that. He wanted me. And He gave it all back. There's no explanation. I don't even begin to try to explain it. I just tell the story like it happened to us. It's not anything that I could have done, but He did. And that's my story. So, cover back up.
we were going to tag team, and there is nothing else I need to say. That is the story of Abraham. Because it's the story of our God. That's the story of Doug and Phyllis Ivy. And God desires that to be our story. Right? Trust me. Right? God says, give me everything. And I'll give it back to you. And so much more. So, I know you guys are about to sing. Can you guys just do a little, like a long instrumental before you fire up singing? And just to give you some space, like, how is the Spirit speaking to you? Just so clearly, Doug and Phyllis were just very clear at times that God was telling them what to do, what not to do. What is the Spirit saying? And how are you wrestling with God in your fear? And what is God saying to you through Phyllis and Doug's story? Whew. Goodness. That was church. Oh, y'all are way too quiet. You're like, yes, that was church. That was church. Like, they didn't know that Doug was going to be talking, nor what Doug was going to be talking about. They took the very phrase of the wall and God tearing down the wall. Oh! It also scared me when they were telling their story, because when he said that the job that God had called him to was Warlick, and he retired, he told us you were there 18 years. It was Doug that started he completely changed the job description. God called him to do that, and he started the hands-on teaching of using the greenhouse. So Warlick was famous for the greenhouse, the plant sale, and that's really what people knew Warlick for. Well, when Doug retired, that is literally when God called us. When he laid down the baton, when God said, "Thank you, Doug, that you have done your well done, good and faithful servant." That's when we moved in as United Methodist congregations, and we started the mentoring program right behind Doug. And it scared me when we started telling this story, because I was like, it's not by accident that God has looped us back together. And your life is not by accident. So I invite you to stand with me. And our mission statement is to share God's embrace. And then we do that in a particular direction. We say our compass points. So if you'll just repeat after me. We are called to share God's embrace with all God's children.
With all God's children.
All God's children.
All God's children.
And to do so, we will follow Jesus. We will trust Jesus. We will welcome others. We will go out to ease pain. We will build bridges. We will care for creation. And we will empower others to join us in the work of Jesus, who is making all things new. By tearing down the walls. So can we sing it as we start to move out? Can we sing again? Oh, I'm going to pass it around. Okay, here we go. Who's going to sing along?